Começou. Então, boa noite. Eu sou o Ricardo.
Good evening. I'm Ricardo Luis Fernandez, one of the organizers in Brasil Cena Aberta, Act 2020, as we call it.
Começou.
Good
Então,
evening.
boa noite. Eu sou o Ricardo Luis Fernandes, um dos organizadores do Brasil Cena Aberta, Ato 2020, como a gente chama. Então, boa noite. De novo. Eu sou o Ricardo Luis Fernandes, um dos organizadores do Brasil Cena Aberta, Ato 2020, como a gente chama.
So this live session, which was suggested by Joanna, she recently presented a project
E daí essa
Theater
live,
in
que
the
foi
parking lot.
uma sugestão até da Joana,
And she created a protocol
que ela
for,
apresentou um projeto há
having
pouco
theater activities
no teatro,
in
acho que
these
Pauleiró, no
COVID
estacionamento,
times,
criando
in these isolation
um protocolo
And I knew that Matthias
para ter teatro nesses tempos de confinamento, nesses tempos que a gente está vivendo, de Covid, de isolamento. E, ao mesmo tempo, eu sabia do Matias, que construiu uma colmeia no Mozon Tour, e o Yeltsin, que tinha um programa de vídeo, e a gente pensando, como chamar isso de um protocolo para novos tempos, e pensar, aí eu falando, o teatro sempre foi considerado como uma ágora, né? E como que se dá essa ágora agora? Quer dizer, em português fica esse jogo entre duas palavras e como isso está acontecendo. E eu acho que vocês três, o do Erwin, eu não sei o que ele está fazendo nesse sentido, mas de construir novas formas de vivenciar o teatro. E eu acho que o Brasil Cena Aberta, muita gente pergunta, o que é isso? É um projeto de internacionalização? É um festival de teatro? Eu sempre digo que é mais um pretexto para se pensar modos de produção, modos de criar e modos de ser diferentes. Modos de ser em rede, em teia. Não tanto em rede como em teia. Porque esses tempos são novos. A gente, nesse ano, que foi um ano virulento, né? E ao mesmo tempo um ano doído, um ano grave, um ano que todas as nossas formas de fazer teatro meio que se dissolveram. As formas que a gente sabia, os nossos modos de ser, modos de criar, modos de produzir, foram dissolvidos. E a gente está aqui tentando reinventar o mundo, né? E reinventar quer dizer contra uma opressão, contra essa coisa mesmo digital, que de certa forma é opressiva e de um controle total, né? A gente está tentando buscar essas brechas. E eu acho que inventar novos protocolos, criar novas estratégias de apresentar o teatro, transformar a ágora, não essa ágora digital, porque tem uma frieza, tem uma coisa estranha, na ágora de verdade, num agora. Então aí foram convidados vocês quatro. Joana, Erwin, Yeltsin, e Matias. Joana já conheço há muito tempo, Yeltsin também, Matias também, só o Erwin que eu estou conhecendo agora. E aí eu vou pedir para cada um se apresentar e contar da sua ideia, do seu protocolo e da sua estratégia. Pensar numa ordem alfabética, de sobrenome, primeiro Albuquerque, depois Erwin, depois Matias e depois Yeltsin. E cada um, por favor, se apresenta, porque eu realmente não sei apresentar cada um. Eu acho que eu vou falar muito, de repente eu falo muito e falo pouco, então cada um se apresenta.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Albuquerque. It's a great pleasure to be here in this sharing of ideas with all these guys who are in different places worldwide. I think this is one of the few achievements that we've had with COVID, if at all. I'm an actress, also a director, producer, teacher, professor, and also researcher in theater. However, I'm here for a very specific reason. Last year, my company was awarded a prize by the Municipal Secretariat of Culture to produce Volpone by Ben Jonson to celebrate our 20th anniversary in 2020. Last March, we had a pandemic, which caught us by surprise. And after being in a standstill for a few months, we decided to create a project, which was an investigation, rather, for us to have face-to-face theater at the pandemic. And this is where the Volpone Protocol, a classic in pandemic times, which was the first face-to-face performance that started in São Paulo in the Arturo Azevedo Theater parking lot. We started our research with some actions, inviting many different guests for an interdisciplinary conversation on the relations between theater, culture, and the pandemic. We also started rehearsing online. So in addition to getting closer, more intimate with Ben Jonson's text, we also started discussing protocols and how we could meet face to face. Then, as we're not a soccer team or even audiovisual professionals who do, run tests all the time, we had some agreements. And we assumed from this arrangement that we would trust each other and that we wouldn't meet to contaminate each other, as long as the protocols would be fully agreed during our rehearsals and during our performances. And this was our scenic device, so to speak. And this was a space, an open air site. And this was the parking lot of a theater, which was so good because we could draw the energy or tap into the power of the theater, and all the staff of the theater helped us with the whole infrastructure for the show. And when we were on scene, we could also use all the facilities of the theater. And when we finally went in the open air, there were some cliches that we needed to respect. Masks. Everyone, of course, could use their masks differently in the most comfy way. And then there was also aesthetic research. The masks needed to, in a way, match the costume. And then as we were under a box with 20 booths for 20 plastic booths for the audience in an arena arrangement. So below a trans box of 5 meters high, that was our technical structure with reflectors and all the other lighting boxes. And then we had microphones under the masks. And this was one of our arrangements, even if we needed to wear masks all the time, but our mics were also adapted to the masks, because the masks, we wanted them to be good looking, in a way, be part of our scene, but also to help in the articulation and projection of the sound of our voices. Then there was research on all our movements. We had 10 actors, and we wanted them to be at a distance from each other, even if the text suggested a nearing of actors or a touching. We simulated these actions that were suggestive rather than having these things happen in real life. We've also realized it was impossible to share objects. In this, when we had the protection angels, and this included the directors, set designers, lighting designers, and producers. They were all wearing surgical clothes, almost like in a surgery, in an operating room. And there was lots of furniture that were moved, again, very carefully. And also the communication with the audience. There were just 20 places, so we didn't have the luxury of having empty places. For this reason, we created a platform, and the production team talked to each viewer. We sold online tickets the day before the performance, and we explained to them how each viewer should get to the theater, with warnings explaining there would be no food on the premises, that wearing masks was mandatory, that it was an open air structure. You might take your coats, and there were protection angels to help everyone, including when people needed to go to the bathroom. And when they got to the foyer, there were open doors, and then they were directed to the parking lot. So being in a theater like this was also very interesting. Although viewers were not in the scene or in the audience space, they had the feeling that they were in the theater. And there was a strong emotion on their part because they felt they were back to the theater room. People who were at home without leaving for 7 months. And this was like a rite of passage for them to be in the theater again. What else can I say? Let me just check my cheat sheet to see if there's anything else missing. Alcohol and gel, and this was used all the time. Disease in Volpone is already a very important topic, but it's also a background. Volpone is someone who likes to build up or amass money. His friends also wanted to make money and get benefits and gold and everything. It's like the fox against the birds, and Volpone pretends to be ill for his friends to give him presents so that they might become their heirs. Am I speaking too fast? Is the translator missing me? My talk? I hope he isn't. And so the actors started, playing around the idea of COVID, and there were many gags from the actors discussing, or in a way, working on this idea of COVID, droplets, alcohol gel, the actors getting close to each other, but not getting close to each other because they were so afraid of contaminating each other. And this was all part of our production of our performance. This project was only possible because we had been awarded this prize. And the prices that we got to rent this equipment was totally exorbitant. We couldn't pay that in other situations. But as everyone needed to work, and they ended up lowering these prices, even those that were involved, they were more available. Otherwise, they wouldn't be available because many artists would be demanding their work, but they were free. And there was a much more in-depth work because people were not doing anything else. They took a deep plunge into this project. Now, before I show you the images, there are two great discoveries in this process. The first was that we realized it was not possible to screen to have expectations in the medium or long run, because every week situations changed, protocols changed, government permits changed, what should be open, what should close down, everything changed all the time. So we decided to have no expectations and to design a schedule that could change all the time, that things might be postponed, that we might have some downtime. We didn't have any downtime, but we expected to have that, and that we might not even start the. We just realized we could really have this performance a week before, and we had a plan B. with special guests on a streaming, but we didn't need this. Anyway, living one day after the other with a night in between is very important. One day at a time, otherwise you get crazy. Another very important discovery is that artists need strength to have face-to-face projects, even if they're written, even if they have special protocols, or even if we have some losses, but we're having losses anyway. So we have to be really flexible rather than looking at what we were living before. We don't know when we will go back to life as before. We need new ideas to the new reality, to the new normal, which we don't know when it will be really normal. So if you just consider when things will come, when the vaccine will be available, it's not easy. We may end up paralyzed. So for us, it was very important to have this project going, and that realizing that no one got contaminated, not from the audience, not from the technical team or the actors, and that we did this with 10 actors, with 18 people involved. And so it was a great pleasure for people to meet, and we felt extremely grateful. And the audience was very grateful. And we are one of the few projects that have a large cast that is ready to take place.
So now in the beginning of 2021, we will have another show, which I believe will survive the pandemic. That is, it will survive the masks. So we'll be able to do Vopani with no masks. And even during this transition, so maybe we can remove the plastic booths, but keep the chairs apart, always rethinking. So basically, this is what I wanted to explain. I have some images for you, 2 short videos, so that you can have images to what I'm saying. I'm now asking for some technical support so we can show the images, please. So these were the rehearsals outdoors. It was really warm. It was October, and there was a lot of sunshine, and it was really hot during the rehearsals. Now here you can see the structure. Now this is the audience coming in. They have their temperature measured. There's also a list, the list with the names of people who had tickets. And as they wait, there are chairs 2 meters apart, so they can wait until the time to go to the parking lot. The only printed material, because our program was only online for people to open on the mobile phone. This is our technical team, the Protection Angels, and look at the plastic booths. This is where the audience stayed, where this is our scenographer, Julio Dostes. And now this is the true audience. They each has his or her Protection Angel. You see there is an opening in the back of the booth so they can come in and then come out. And that's how they are apart. And you see the angels of protection exchanging the objects, so there's money, there's a gold glass, there's a gold cup, and there is always some kind of protocol as they exchange these objects, and the objects change hands. This Protection Angel becomes someone who comes on stage, then out of stage. So some kind of an invader. Now, these are the actresses and actors. They are speaking from within the masks with the microphone. And now just a short teaser for the show. I think we will not be able to hear the sound here, but later on you can check. That was it. Thank you. I hope it was useful. And now I look forward to hearing from you. Now, Irvin, you have the floor.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Ricardo and Andrea, for inviting me to be part of this fantastic panel. Hello, everybody. I am a theater maker, predominantly, first and foremost, and also an educator. And then I also work as an international arts advocate, if you will. Originally from the Netherlands, Amsterdam, but I am speaking to you right now from New York, where it's getting chilly from the winter in New York. So with regards to all these protocols, as I said, I'm predominantly a theater maker, but through my work for 4 years, I was the cultural attaché for the Dutch embassy here in the US. And that kind of threw me into international cultural policy. And so I became the artistic creative director of the International Society for Performing Arts. And then now also the co-founder, together with many other people in Africa, of the Pan-African Creative Exchange, PACE, which is a very similar platform to Brasil Cena Aberta. And we very much look forward to future South-South connections in that sense. Our biannual platform takes place in June every year. And of course, this year, that became very difficult, and we had to very rapidly move everything online. And we were able to do so in August and create an entire online experience for the Pan-African Creative Exchange, which for us has been actually a positive way in going to the digital sense, because it really became much more accessible, particularly on the African platform, for people where still travel is quite difficult. Not only visa-wise, but of course also expenses, but even just planes from one country to another. So the digital platform has become really quite interesting for us and was very successful. I'm on this panel also to talk about a few projects as a theater maker that I'm involved with. Actually, already before the pandemic, I was working quite internationally on a lot of different projects, but also already through the mediums of Zoom or Skype, working with an artist, a visual artist in Australia, working in Korea with a platform there. And Yeltsu and I met each other last year at Vita Chile in Santiago de Chile, and we are working on a project together for children as we are speaking, and Yeltsu will talk a little bit more about that project later on. I will speak about a project that I did in August remotely in Norway, in Bergen, Norway. So maybe not so much talking about the theaters in and of itself, because I don't run a theater. I am really speaking more about how to do international collaborations in this new COVID era. And in Norway, I was 2 years ago for a residency, working with a composer and 2 designers on a project based on Kjernet. It's a famous Norwegian novel and film that we wanted to create into a performance experience, very much focused on a symphony, a rule of symphony created by this choreographer. And 2 years ago, we started that work. we weren't able to finish it. And for some reason, actually, it was the pandemic that kind of blew new life into this project. We were able to receive funding in Norway. And in the summer, Norway was actually in Europe one of the countries with the least COVID cases, and where things were relatively still open. And so we were able to create work while I was in New York and they were working in Bergen. We initially were talking about multiple different ways of doing it. We talked about a drive-in, having performance taking place in front of a lot of cars, where it would be transmitted through the radio, the car radio. And then in the end, we ended up not doing that because there were some environmental issues with that related, because the cars would all have to be running the whole time, which was not very great. And so we ended up doing it in a abandoned dairy factory, an old dairy factory, and we were able to have 50 audience members max. And 50 audience members, indeed, everything done through digitalization, so that there were no tickets, nobody had to hand over things with each other. And I think I just want to share some pictures, if we can, because then I'll first start with some pictures and I can talk over the pictures. So there we go. This is the poster of it. So it's based on an old story that is really revolved around the lake and what comes out of the lake. So the darkness, it actually felt really good to work on this project during these kind of dark times, if you will. But out of the darkness comes the light. That's where the story then goes. So if we go to the next photo, working remotely, obviously we did a lot of work through pictures, through sending videos to each other, because we weren't able to constantly be together on Zoom. That doesn't work all the time. People just need to have the freedom to rehearse by themselves also. So there was a lot of trust created, and it was really wonderful to work in this way. I will say, actually, in some ways, the meetings that we had were much more precise. We were much quicker in making decisions and actually get the work done in a shorter amount of time than if we would probably meet in person. So this is the abandoned dairy factory. If we go to the next picture, please. So it shows, like with arrows, they send pictures, and this is what we mean. This is what we want to talk about. If we can go to the next picture, please. There we go. It shows that, so we really chose this space because, as you can see around, there's a railing around where audiences could stand, so they wouldn't be on the same spot per se where the performers were taking place. So we created our own lake, if you will. We called it the pool that the dancers would be performing in, and we had the musicians there as well. And the audience would be around in the railings, in the balconies. Next picture, please. So this is like a rehearsal photo of the two dancers. They also sent me short videos, and then I would reply with a video, and we would rehearse in that way, and obviously also have some moments together to rehearse. Next picture, please. So this is where the audience came in. In Norway, during the summer, this was in August, it gets dark very, very late, actually at midnight. So our performance started at midnight. We had a run, and similarly to what was just being told, people were so excited to go out and to experience art that it was sold out in no time. Next picture, please. Again, I will say that this was during the time in Norway where it was still relatively open, so masks were not mandatory, and you see the audience were placed 6 feet apart because the whole performance took place throughout the factory. So it started actually in the parking garage, and then slowly the musicians would take them through a journey through the factory, and then they would end up in that area where you just saw the pool. The next picture, please. So this is one of the musicians, and so clearly a lot of the perspectives of the audience was from above. So we really had to take care of how to perform that, because the audience was looking at it, looking down from the balconies into this pool area. Next picture, please. And these are just some images, so maybe you can just roll through the pictures. You can keep going with the pictures, because these are just some images of the performance, and then we have a short video at the end. So here you see the audiences, and they were grouped in households. So if they came with groups of 3, they could see it. This is like what you see from above. Thank you. Yes, this is great. So you can really see how the audience was looking at this. And the great thing was, of course, that because the audiences were separated from the performers, there was a lot of freedom for the performers to perform. And here is the journey through the factory as audiences were walking through the factory. Now, of course, this is nothing new. I think site-specific work was there all the time. But I also think that the pandemic, I think the performing arts field was already a bit in a crisis, let's face it. There was a bit of a crisis already before this pandemic hit. And I think young makers were already investigating new ways. We're already looking at things that have now just been accelerated by the pandemic because we're forced to look at new ways. I think this is the final picture. So I think what is really interesting to look at with regards to the new world that we're facing is that it really has accelerated the drive for new methods, for new ways of linking to audiences. I'm definitely a person that loves the live experience, and I think that's what we're absolutely missing in a large way. But at the same time, I do think that the digital world has created a lot of accessibility for people that before were not able to necessarily access all these art forms. I think Johanna, your image that you just showed reminded me also a little bit of the Peep Show Palace that was created in Amsterdam this summer, based on the old porno peep shows, where people were seated in one, in little cubicles of one, and that's how they were able to see the performance in Amsterdam. So there are great, innovative new ways of looking at the performance. And maybe that's it for now. I can share the video. I think it's a 2-minute video that gives you a little bit of an experience of that performance called Chairnet in Bergen, Norway this summer. And I think that's the end of it. I didn't want to speak because it's really a symphony with dance performance. So even though we as panelists could not hear the sound, I think everybody else was able to hear the sound. So it's really about the music that was created by the composer. That was it for me with regards to this performance. Jeltsu will talk about our project that we are working on right now that hasn't been finished yet.
Hello, hi Jeltsu. Welcome to talk about the project. I just skipped turning with... não, tem que falar em português, desculpa. Troquei de turno aqui com o Ricardo.
I apologize, I'll speak in Portuguese. I am now in the theater in Cacilda da Becker, that's why I'm wearing a mask. So this is where we have our headquarters for the streaming. And so now we will hear from Jeltsu.
Okay, it's my turn now. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Jeltsu. I'm from the Basque country. I have a very different name for Brazilians. Few people can pronounce my name, but I've been living in Brazil for 17 years now. In the last few years, I've been an actor, performer, working in art history, set design, scenography. In the last few years, I have been working with children. This has been my focus. And we have some relational interactive devices. So children create with me what we call performance or happenings. In other words, we create together. And we also use Basque artifacts. I'm talking from a city called Cunha in the interior of the state of São Paulo. And my connection is not very good. I've known Erwin. I met him last year in Chile, Santiago. In this, of course, there was the social turmoil there and the event didn't take place, but it was very important. And there was the Latin American art fair that was canceled. And there was one person who makes many connections from Latin America and the rest of the world. So there was Benet Suarez from Amazon Network, and I presented, or I performed a piece of work that was, and Erin was part of it, and that was Villa Grimaldi. That was a wonderful space. It was a very intense experience, a very, very significant meeting or encounter between Erwin and me. And then the pandemic came. So for me, I have proposals, interactive proposals with children, but everything was canceled. All the trips, all the performances. And then I thought, what can I do? How can I create? Creation is the breath of life for us to overcome all these difficulties. In these 9 months, there have been many projects in a web that have come up. And now we do everything online. So I'll be presenting a project. And we will be showing how Erwin and I have been creating every week. He is in New York and I'm here, and we've been creating together. This project is called Playgrounds Everywhere. And there are many phases to it. And I'll show you a performance with some images in a minute. And there is a high contradiction. There's online, the online world, and there are children. I have 2 children. And school, of course, got into people's homes, daily meetings, virtual meetings every day. So there was a whole new strange world of the relationship between children, especially young children, and digital devices. So this project, among many others, they start from this contradiction of how to create proposals that come from the rectangle, the virtual rectangle of our screens, for people to enjoy online, so that this is just a starting point to activate everything that all the artistic art issues of my work, children as artists, and the free and unique creation of each child, and also their collective experience and collective creation. So I'll be sharing my screen for a second. And I think I need someone to let me. I can't share my screen. Can anyone help me? So as I said, this is called Playground Everywhere. This is the name of the project. And this is a large project in many different phases. So we are everywhere in the house. And schools were eventually open, and children will go back to school at some point. So we're talking about next year. And then we'll go to the public space. But I don't do anything in the theater. We just use the outdoors or places of transit, but never inside the theater box, if you will. I'd just like to read something about the issue of playground. That's Aldo van Eyck. He's a Dutch architect and urban planner. After the Second World War, he worked in Amsterdam. He was a public servant, and for many years he created 700 playgrounds for Amsterdam. And he has very interesting issues that he raised about trees and leaves, and trees and houses. A tree is a leaf, but also a huge leaf. And the city is only a city as long as it's also a huge house. A house is also a tiny city. The project has 3 phases. So the house at play, or playgrounds in the house. Everything starts from this image you may have seen during the pandemic. In the first few years, there was a school, I think in France, and children were in the yard with a teacher in rectangles. That was a very strong image, a very young children. So from this image, this is where I realized it was both tragic and powerful. And I thought, in all these drawings on the floor and all this very cruel reality of being thrown into it, I thought, this is also a graphic device, like a playground that's ready-made, although it wasn't designed for this purpose. I'm drawing a parallel between the Second World War and Aldo van Eyck started producing work, building, designing these playgrounds. And after the pandemic, after we go back to normal, to some extent, children will take the space of schools, this public space, and they need to start relating to each other after 9 months. Even for adults, it's being really tough. So we don't know what will happen to children that are thrown in a stuck into apartments. And there was this issue about snow as an event that will take place later. And this is Older Van Eyck's son playing. And there were many images that were captured during the pandemic, and they talk to these graphics that we created to keep people spatially apart, at least spatially, so that we had a protocol for making sure we were distant. We just see the first picture. We cannot see the others. Really? What is the first one? Tree is leaf and leaf is tree. Why does it go down? I'm speaking on images and you can't see them. Just a second, please. Don't you have a scroll bar on the right-hand side? So I scroll it down, but it doesn't go down. Some technical problems here.
You might have to stop sharing and put it on the image and then share again. Now we see the image, yes. Yeah, now it works. There.
That's right. So this was the image I was mentioning. Thank you for letting me know. I was speaking, I didn't see it. It wasn't being shown. So these are the children inside these rectangles. And this is Aldo van Eyck's quote: "When snow falls on cities, children seize power." So how can we discover or rediscover the city? And this is something that's taking place everywhere now, especially with children. What will happen after 9 months living in an apartment? So all the graphics, the new graphics of the world that will make sure people are spatially apart, spatial distancing that are now everywhere. And in the project, we're now developing a series of videos. We've also written an ebook starting or discussing this contradiction between watching a video online and also starting to play with very simple elements. And then we'll take an additional step from home to school. So school will be a space for relationships, for building relationships. And also from the perspective of being at home for 9 months during the pandemic. And then we will create relational, interactive, real face-to-face interaction performances in the public space. So we have materials, videos, ebooks, and in the house phase, we will have a first experience on Zoom. We're still in this contradiction. Children are on Zoom in their own homes, and I'll be conducting an experience. In this experience, the houses will be at play, part of the play. They'll be exploring their homes with objects and games. So this is a performance, a virtual performance that's also online. And playgrounds will be also considering things that are ephemeris with large structures. So we think about devices that are activated when the performance is also on the scene, and also children and adults can use these devices to relate to each other without the performer or the happening. All images on the left-hand side, Van Eyck's playground, one of his playgrounds, then a closed playground, and then all the graphics on the ground that caught our eye at the beginning of the project. So the concepts, we start from the digital screen with propositions to leave that screen. Then the space of the home as playground to be rediscovered, reinvented, revisited. And this is something children already do. We all know that we're not inventing anything new, that children have this, and this is extremely important. So we should look at that together. And also possibilities of games, the space of school as a space for encounters, for meeting and an active creative relation, and also the public space. And finally, these are some images of the playgrounds, Maneek's playgrounds in Amsterdam. And this is, he was an amazing architect and urban planner. And so many concepts that he expressed and built on the importance of children as city dwellers who inhabit this place, this space. And also a series of highly inspirational images showing that how human beings in a current situation, this post-pandemic world, how we consciously or unconsciously also become part of the play. So we're creating home devices to make sure that we're spatially apart. And also protocols that are in place in schools to make sure that children are apart. But we know that children are the ones that are less contagious, if you will, that they are the ones that follow all protocols. So in closing, this is my project, and I'd like to share Urban and I. And this was the focus, and also considering children's rights, the right to be in the public space and schools. This is something that, for reasons that are force majeure, but that we adults are forbidding them from using. And this will be really important, how to create together with children artistically. That's what I had to say.
Obrigadíssima, Yeltsin, por essa
Thank you,
apresentação inspiradora desse projeto.
It was highly inspirational.
Aliás, 3 projetos muito inspiradores. Então, a gente vê que a criatividade aflora rapidinho na hora da necessidade também. O Volpone, que eu não tive a oportunidade de ver ao vivo, mas eu vi o vídeo, vi as imagens.
I just saw it on video images.
Uma pena, mas vou poder ver, né, Joana?
Unfortunately, but I think I'll be able to see it next year, right? The project will be back
feliz com essa notícia.
next year.
Então, quem
So
não
I'm
assistiu
really
o Volpone vai poder
happy
assistir.
to hear that. Those who haven't watched Volpone,
O Erwin, que trabalhou desde o ensaio através do Zoom, quer dizer, também uma situação completamente absurda de você dirigir um trabalho e colocar em cena e assistir a própria apresentação na tela. E finalmente essa das crianças que realmente estão aí muito sofrendo bastante com essa pandemia, essa ideia do playground, que tem depois, acho que um passo seguinte, que é vocês fazerem ele ao vivo também, não é, Elton?
Live. Is that right?
Segunda etapa. Bom, Matias, diferentemente do outro lado da história, no teatro dele, ele vai se apresentar. Ele fez uma instalação arquitetônica para o teatro poder acolher o público. Então, esse aqui, vamos dizer, do outro lado, do lado de lado do teatro, ele vai poder contar para a gente um pouquinho como foi essa experiência dele. Matias.
Okay, Matias?
Today I'm in Frankfurt in Germany, and I'm the director of an international production house, a theater, because it works as a municipal, as the city theater with young innovative artists There are other similar theaters who work with their own company, but here we usually invite local artists for their performances and also international artists. We even had Brazilians. We work with contemporary theater, dance, performance, music, concerts. So we have a black box room, 25 by 14 meters. But all of that was shut down in March for 2 months. And as we began to discuss how we were going to reopen, the main obstacle for us was this concept of social distancing. So usually in this room we have 200 or 500 people, and now for social distancing, only 50 people would be the full capacity of the room. And we thought this was very depressing. We wanted to have more people, but it also helped us build a new space of thinking, a new way of being together. So the same thing as other speakers mentioned before, is suddenly it became normal for us to meet. And then meeting became something rare, valuable, important. Well, so then we called a bunch of architects. They are actually scenic architects because they built installations or temporary spaces for art audiences or theater audiences. They're called Bohnen Berlin, and so they came to our space. Maybe we could show the PDF, the first one where we see the theater room. So you will see the space in which they built this installation. We called it Bau. Bau is the German word for construction, but it's also the word we use for animal homes, for example, the Ants Hill. No, it's not this one. It's the first PDF. It's called 00. Right. So, but this space that we had a new installation. We installed 19 family spaces. So this was like an ants house or an ants hill because it's built with wood and clay and using natural materials. It was built with natural materials. So yes, this is the floor plan, and you can see these family spaces that we built. Each family space has 2 chairs, and the distance, because there were walls between the chairs, we did not need such a big distance between one chair and the other. So we begin from these images, and you can see the inside of the theater. So, we opened this new theater in September, and for the audience, it was a very different experience because people came in from the back door, so they did not stay at the lobby waiting to avoid social contact, and they moved directly to that room where we had the family enclosures. The pictures, can we not see the pictures? Yes, right, this one. So then you come in and you go up these 3 steps, and the construction is not very rectangular. It's not geometric. It has these curves. This is the empty room. You see, each family space has a window, but the windows are all different. So you look from inside, you look from the scenic space, and you see the other people looking at you. You have direct eye contact through the glass. So this theater space became a huge success in the city because it was the only opportunity for people to go to the theater. We imagined something new, and then we built this to live through this situation now. we now hold shows for 38 people. So 38 people inside these 19 family spaces. And at the upper floor, on the upper floor, we have the technical team. Now, this is another show. We usually run a show for 2 weeks, a number of sessions per day, and artists work in different ways. You know, they use the space differently. Because we have 19 family spaces, you can only sell 38 tickets. And you cannot buy one ticket. You always have to buy two, you know, because these are family spaces. It's very different from what we have before. So now we have a whole system of solidarity prices. Each viewer can choose to pay between 5 and 6 euro. And so the viewer will decide how much to pay. And the fact is that we received more money than when we had a fixed price. That is, we saw a lot of solidarity. Right now, we are shut down again in Germany because the quarantine has just been extended to January 10. But for the next summer season, May, June next year, we are preparing another project with this group that you could see on the PDF. I mean, we're not able to share that screen, right? Can we try again, maybe? So, yes, you will have this material to use and to refer to later. Now, this is another plan we have. We want to build that in the old Frankfurt University, and there we will be able to have almost 300 people on 3 different floors. So we will be using scaffolds and staircases and with an arena in the middle. So the audience will be looking at this arena, but there will be many more viewers, you know, a bigger audience, almost 300. The problem for us to build a stage outdoor became an issue of you know, having the audience looking from above, because usually these spaces, they were built for music concerts and the stage is higher than the audience, but that doesn't really work very well for dancing or other performatic arts. And so now we have this idea. We are now joining partners that will invest with us so that next year by May or September we will have this space ready. That's it. Thank you. Why do you say from May to September? Do you believe we will still continue with social distancing, or was this an artistic poetical decision? Well, with all, like in all projects, you know, when we began, we thought we always wanted to do something like this, right? So the pandemic then became an opportunity for us to make dreams come true. But yes, we believe that 2021 will be a whole year of social distancing. The pandemic will slow down gradually as we see more vaccine, as more people are vaccinated. We know that it's going to take about 10 months to vaccinate the whole population. So next year, we will still be facing these issues. Matthias, just one question. What kind of material did you use for the hive? Clay and wood. It's like building a house. You know these German houses, these traditional German houses that are built out of clay? Did I say clay? Right, clay. The pronunciation in Portuguese. Yes, clay. It's 100% recyclable. And the person who built this usually builds houses, you know, where you have a whole family living. And so, and it's pretty resistant. So he was building this for many months, day and night. And then when we dismantle this, he will take that clay and build another house with it. That's fantastic.
Desde quando que vocês abriram
para o público, Mati? Did you open it for the public? In September, early September, but then early November we had to shut down, and since then we've been shut down. We expect to reopen in January. But we will keep this installation until July next year.
And Matthias, has there also been a conversation or collaboration with the folks in Amsterdam that did the Peep Show Palace? Because they did a construction also with those 2 folds on 2 stories high for, I think, 200 people max. I was wondering if the architects might have collaborated or communicated with each other.
Oh, well, I don't think so, but that's a great tip. I will see if I can make a bridge so they can communicate.
Elton e Erwin, vocês, talvez você tenha falado nisso, desculpa se eu não
maybe you said it in the beginning, I was not here, but you,
projeto,
I mean, what are the next steps in your project?
Agora desenvolvendo. Para começar a fazer
that you
agora,
are now
bem próximo, nesse final de semana, vocês vão começar a fazer
you will be doing something next weekend, right, with children at home, is that right?
Quais são os próximos passos?
What are the next steps? Yes. Now, I forgot to show the images. They were important, but well. So, we're now talking about the gaming house or the playful house. So, if we cannot use public spaces, then there are a number of videos that we are producing with this idea of the children being able to build their own playgrounds so that they can reinvent their homes and build their playful homes. But we don't want to build tutorials. That is, we don't want to be prescriptive because the children know how to play. They don't need somebody to teach it to them. So what we can do is to try and open up new possibilities or broaden their possibilities or together try to see from a new perspective. So yes, next weekend on Saturday, we're going to have a first experiment of a performance, a virtual performance in real time using Zoom with a small number of children, all of them at home. And yes, we'll see how that relationship will happen, you know, between myself as a performer and the children, what kind of interaction we will be able to achieve, what kind of collective creation we will have. So yes, we're now in this prep phase. And then we will also have a mini book. So based on the book, either a digital or a paper book. It would be nice to have also a paper book, so an object. And based on that object, based on that book, you can build new games, new forms of playing. So this would be the first phase. Then maybe we could move to the schools. And now there's something that Irving and I are learning, which is that it is easy, you know, it's like in the past. And as we research, we see how easy it will be to make a performance, a real performance in the future, you know, an in-person performance. After we build this relationship. So when you have your body in a relationship with another body, it's always easier, right?
Certamente. Nós aqui estamos vendo no primeiro dia de atividades do Brasil Cena Aberta online, o quão mais fácil que é qualquer montagem com 4 containers em dia só para montar do que essa parafernália toda aqui de streaming.
An in-person show, you know, when you have a couple of containers, it's much easier than having all of these devices, electronic devices.
Numa situação real era muito fácil. Põe uma pessoa, senta, tá fácil, a gente coloca e faz. Não, assim, é o sinal, o streaming, a máquina, a outra máquina que já está em outra sala concomitante, o outro então não consegue entrar assim, não consegue entrar assado. Obviamente, eu acho que isso tudo daqui a muito pouco tempo vai estar resolvido, porque a gente está meio que ainda engatinhando nesse tipo de coisa e a tecnologia rapidamente a gente vai resolver. Mas ainda é um desafio muito grande, né? Se nada mais fácil do que uma montagem ao vivo, você encontrar
so it would be much easier to set up a scene in person. At least this is what we learned how to do all our lives. And today, you know, this is a big challenge as we have 3, 4 activities and they are happening at the same time. All of them have simultaneous translation and everyone on screen. I mean, it's not only that we do not have that physical contact, that in-person contact, but it's also how to deal with the technology. Now, Joanna, you had an audience all the time, right? People were not afraid of going to the theater. No, we had a full house. We had a full house all the time. And I told them that we had very direct communication with the people, you know, so when somebody gave up, I mean, because that was October and we had a lot of rain, you know, heavy rains. And so sometimes someone would give up a few minutes before and we already had an online waiting list and we would invite the next person in line and we always had full house. We never had empty booths. Well, a couple of times we had 1 or 2 empty booths, but in some cases we needed to add additional chairs because people really wanted to be there, even if they had to be at the top floor with the technical team. They wanted to see the show. So even those who were afraid, at the end of the experience, they said, wow, I feel safer here than I would feel in the supermarket.
Depois tem obviamente,
right, well, then obviously you have the challenge of how long this will be sustainable, you know, financially speaking, because with such a small number of people, how many people did you say you could fit in the theater? Well, in our beehive, we can have 38 people only.
Cobrar muito caro.
So you have to charge very expensive for each ticket. Well, people can get there 45 minutes before, so they have a full-fledged experience, you know. Even, you know, the smell of the hive, that smell of clay is also part of the experience. And we had a show at 3, and then one at 6, and then one at 9. All right, so you have a number of shows every day. Yes, because we have a small number of viewers. And whenever we can open, we have a full house. Everybody wants to come. And people feel safe. They feel that they are in a space where they stop thinking about COVID. That is, they are in a different situation when they only think about the show. And so you no longer think about safety measures, because that would be horrible, you know, because you lose your imagination. You miss the opportunity of imagining. So we have to be creative. We have to build spaces with a lot of imagination and creativity so that people can recover that meaning, the very sense of our artistic work. I mean, so that's what we thought, you know, as we built these spaces and new protocols. Yes, I think this is the big challenge, how we can make spaces that can be creative so people can stop thinking about that only topic. Matthias, can I ask a question? Yes, sure. Do you have a difference between outdoor or indoor shows? I mean, talking about the rules, no. Right now, we cannot do anything, not indoors, not outdoors. But next year, we will do something outdoors because we believe it's much easier, you know, because you know that the temperature here is sometimes very cold in September, October, and then it takes a long while for the temperature to be pleasant again. But yes, when it's the summer, people really want to be outdoors. And outdoors, I mean, when people were out, we had fewer cases. And now as we begin to see a colder weather, we see more cases because people are more indoors. Okay, thank you.
Vamos passar mais uma rodada, não sei de perguntas, se alguém tiver mais alguma colocação.
Do you have any more questions?
Boa,
Do we have questions from the audience?
Ana, você está olhando o YouTube,
yes, we should
tem
check
perguntas
if
para
we have
eles?
questions from the audience. How many people do we have connected on YouTube?
Fala para mim o número de pessoas e olha no chat.
How many people we have connected on YouTube, and please check if we have questions. I'm sorry, we're having a slight technical issue.
Pronto. pessoas no YouTube.
22 people.
Isso. E alguma pergunta do público para as pessoas que estão aqui?
So, questions from the audience.
Se alguém tiver alguma pergunta do público, muito bem-vinda.
Any audience members that have questions are very welcome to ask them.
Vamos saber se o vídeo vai ficar disponível no YouTube com as apresentações.
It will be available on YouTube. Yes, it will.
Como é aprender essa tecnologia na marra?
What it's like to learn this technology.
Acho que da tecnologia na marra, quem poderia responder como é aprender essa tecnologia na marra?
What was that like, learning it without any options?
Erwin, vocês dois que lidaram muito aí com a tecnologia no trabalho de vocês.
To, use a lot of technology in your work. Maybe you can tell us.
Erwin que até os ensaios fez via telas.
The rehearsals tem mais para dizer pra gente da right? Maybe Erwin has more to say about technology.
Well, we definitely had to investigate a lot of different technologies, of course. I mean, let's face it, we are all so incredibly accustomed to Zoom right now, and yet I think at the beginning of this year, many of us had never even heard of Zoom or had never been on Zoom. So it's definitely something that you have to learn fast. And Jeltsu and I, for example, are also working. Part of our live performance, virtual performance, will also work with OBS, which is a new system. A lot of people probably now know with Zoom as well, with multiple cameras and stuff like that. So we are definitely getting a crash course in that as well to work with that. And we were also, as a platform, and I think, Andrea, you and I spoke about that for a little bit, with the Pan-African Creative Exchange, we also looked at different platforms on how to interact with our audiences digitally, because I think that is one of the biggest things that we are all kind of craving, is this art of gathering, this getting together, because that was really what the theater is about for me, is to gather with people, is to come together with people. And how can we create that in a virtual sense? And I was very, very struck here in New York when it was really bad in April and we weren't allowed to have funerals. And it was quite emotional to hear from people that were having funerals in the gaming world. So they were coming together as avatars online in a gaming world because they felt more connected than being on Zoom, for example. And so I really do feel like we're looking at the gaming world from a virtual sense to see what can be done in that aspect, not only to tell the story that we want to tell, but also how to interact with the audience, how to create that sense of gathering. And for example, with PACE, we used another platform besides Zoom that is created in India called AirMeet, which created a much more flexible way for audiences to interact with each other as well as with people on the stage, so to speak. Where in Zoom you have the breakout rooms, but you don't have a say on when you go to a breakout room, or when in AirMeet you actually could choose where to sit and who to talk to, and all of those things. So it's a very interesting platform. So we definitely learned about a lot of different platforms very, very fast.
Yes. Acho que é esse mesmo grande desafio. Essas plataformas, durante bom tempo, vão estar nos circulando e fazendo parte aí das nossas vidas. E acho que mesmo voltando ao presencial também é um mundo sem volta. São coisas que vão conviver aí, que a gente vai aprendendo. E esse teatro na plataforma, ou teatro com outros modos de receber o público, com novos protocolos, uma coisa vai misturando aí na outra para fazer. Sei, Ricardo, quer falar mais alguma coisa? Alguém para a gente encerrar aqui o painel? Quero agradecer, então, muitíssimo a presença de vocês aqui hoje. Agradecer, Joana, muito obrigada. Erwin, muito obrigada. Yalcho, espero que eu tenha pronunciado melhor. Obrigada. Matias, muitíssimo obrigada. Desculpem aí a mistura da gente trocando um e outro nessa mediação. E acompanhe Brasil Cena Aberta. Amanhã nós temos a estreia de um espetáculo que foi justamente criado em cima de um videogame que chama Oma, que vai ficar em cartaz até dia 7 aqui na nossa plataforma, no Brasil Cena Aberta, que é também um pessoal que é bem do teatro, mas que está criando uma outra forma de interagir, de jogar com as pessoas com videogame. Nós acabamos de falar disso, acho que tem uma coisa aí para assistir também amanhã. Os espetáculos, tem encontros, também de novo painéis aqui no YouTube. Hoje, mais tarde, às 9 da noite, lançamento de um livro da feira Página Aberta, feira online do Brasil Cena Aberta. E é isso, muitíssimo obrigada a vocês.
Fair. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrea. This was a great meeting. It was so important to be able to talk about the new uses, how we can use these new protocols to make theater happen again.
É isso aí, temos que voltar para o teatro de alguma forma.
Yes, that's right. We have to go back to the theater anyway. We have to meet each other again.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.